So, all right, this is a few days later. Let me get back to the essay. So, how do we flow? We just stop doing those things that keep us from flowing. And the primary culprit in staunching our flow is attachment, whether it be attachment to things, to people, to ideas, to our wishes and desires, or even to our understanding of things. The more obvious forms of attachment are to things, such as money, property, people, and so on. But the deeper holding on is all the ways in which we hold reality in ourselves to be solid when they and we are not. There's mostly just space here, essenceless. The more that we can view ourselves and all of phenomenal reality as a dance of light, or just specks of dust, the more space there is for flow. So we harden things with our conceptual mind that tries to conceptualize and sort of reify things as existent or non-existent. But if we allow things just to be kind of a shadow and play of light and shadow, then we allow things to move. All right, so the middle path is an attitude. It can come across as philosophy, but it's an attitude, and ultimately it's a view of reality as it is. And that view opens up realities in ways that continually challenge us to let go where we hold on. I continue to say this, but I don't know of anything more practical to lessen suffering. And what is it that's so practical? It's the view that there's really nothing solid happening here. Or we could say, there's nothing really serious happening here. It's no big deal. Everything here is as substantial as a dream. That's the view. We might as well be in a simulation, including us. So I added this part much later, years later. That is, we might as well be part of a long and intricate computer code written by an intelligence that we have no access to. It may very well be that it isn't 2022 right now. It may be the year 4000, and they've written a computer simulation of people who believe themselves to be real, which is us. There's no way for us to prove whether this is true or false. Why not take the view that this is true then? By the way, there are philosophers who contemplate this question, and one of the leading philosophers I read has guessed or postulated that there's probably, I think, about a 30 to 40% chance that this reality that we're living in is in fact a simulation created by a civilization from the future. And in fact, for example, Moore's law, I believe, says that our computing capacity doubles every year. And in fact, it's been the case since the beginning of computing, and so we would expect computing capacity to continue growing at this rate. I read that the human brain has a certain level of complexity. I forgot the number. And our current computers can't match the complexity of a human brain. But if our computing capacity continues growing, so like, for example, by next year it'll double, then quadruple, then 8 times, 16 times, 32 times, and so on, I believe in about 20 to 30 years, our computing capacity should match the computing capacity of a human brain. So to be very, very conservative, we could say in 50 years, our computers, likely our personal computers, will be much more complex than the human brain. So a human being with a personal computer in 50 years will likely be able to run a simulation of some artificial intelligence, artificial life that has the complexity of a human brain, human mind. So that's in 50 years. So in 100 years, again, so 100 is double 50, but we shouldn't think of it as double. We should think of it as 2 to the 50th power, right? Because every year it's doubling. So in 100 years, it's pretty likely that on an advanced computer, they'll be able to simulate hundreds, if not millions, of such beings in a simulation, along with simulating the environment that appears real to these artificial beings inside of a computer code. So So that's in 100 years. So to be conservative, let's say in 1,000 years. I mean, that's a very conservative estimate, right? So in the year 3000, those people could pretty, not just possibly, very rather easily, one would guess, simulate an entire life such as this planet Earth, where all the inhabitants think of themselves as real and have an experience of life the way we're having them. So perhaps in the year 3000, they've created a simulation of a civilization, let's say in 2900. So now you have a simulation of a civilization in 2900, and they have advanced technology where they've created a simulation of a civilization in 2800, and so on and so forth. And there's us in 2020. So our reality could simply be a computer simulation inside of another simulation, inside of another simulation, ad infinitum. Let's say 1,000 degrees, 1,000 sort of folds over, with people living in the year 4,000 or 5,000 watching all this, or just letting it run like a computer game just for fun. And we don't know, and we're convinced that it's real. And so, again, one of the leading philosophers in this area has speculated that there's likely a 30 to 40% chance that that's how it is, that we aren't living in the year 2022, and none of this is as real as we think it is, even though as inhabitants of a simulation, we're programmed to believe that it's real. So anyway, so there's no way to prove whether this is true or false. Why not take the view that this is possibly true then? Now, if that's so, the task isn't to find a job, create a family, pursue all the trappings of security and success in the simulation. No, perhaps it's to look for cracks in the code and see if we can't exploit those openings. At least, that's what I find most ennobling and stimulating of a deep happiness and peace. One might even characterize the Buddha, or possibly some of these other great teachers, as having taken that tack, that approach, rather than settle for security, career, family, friends, and so on. They've tried to crack the code, the famous movie The Matrix, or crack the code of this simulation that we're living in. Anyway, that's the end of this little essay that I wrote back in March of 2018 that I never published. I hope that was a little bit of amusement for you.